Good morning and welcome back to the Faith and Formation podcast. It's Monday, March 2nd. Thanks for joining us here this morning and being a part. If you've not been here before, this is a podcast where we take a look at a chapter every day and find a devotional thought in it to help us carry through our day. So thanks again for joining today and being a part. I know many of you are very faithful in listening to the podcast, and I appreciate that, and I hope that it continues to be a blessing to you. This morning, we're in Colossians chapter 1. It's March 2nd, by the way. March 2nd. Can you believe that? Already 2026 into the third month. Wow. What a... it's going quick. It's going really quick. I hope that 2026 has been very good for you so far. Hope you've been able to make some meaningful decisions and that the things are going well. And this morning, now we're in Colossians chapter 1. And hopefully you read that chapter already and you found something from it. And then you jumped on here. If you haven't read it, hey, look, go and read Colossians chapter 1. Again, another great chapter. It's going to have a lot of stuff in it for you. And these Pauline epistles are just packed with stuff to help us in our Christian life. So go take a look at Colossians chapter 1. I know it will be a help to you. Before we hit to our the main part of our lesson this morning, let's take a look at our memory verse. It comes from Romans chapter 6 and verse 18. It says there, being then made free from sin, you became the servants of righteousness. Romans chapter 6 and verse 18. All right, Colossians chapter 1 this morning, we're looking at verse 9. It says there, for this cause we also, since the day we heard it, do not cease to pray for you, and to desire that ye might be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding. This morning, we're looking at a prayer pattern. That's the title of our devotional this morning, a prayer pattern. Really, the question I want to tackle this morning is, what do our prayers look like? What do they look like? When you approach the throne of grace, how do you address God? We're looking at prayer here this morning and these questions, trying to answer them. And really, it's a great question for us to ask often to understand how we're praying, what we're praying for. It's not just a frivolous thing. I feel like we get in this routine of praying. You know, we pray before meals. We pray in church. Pray before bed sometimes maybe. And we get this routine, and it's kind of like memorization. We say a lot of the same things. We do it because we know we should. All these type of things, and really it becomes this monotonous thing, this thing we do out of habit. It's not a real, truly felt prayer, one that we mean. We just do it because it's a habit. It's what we do. We pray. And hopefully that's not you. Hopefully that you can come to the Lord every single day and pray to him sincerely and mean what you're saying. I hope that is you, and that is how you pray to the Lord. Now, here we see a bit of a pattern for our prayer. Here in verse 9, it says, do not cease to pray for you. And that's really where the phrase that we're focusing on here this morning, do not cease to pray for you. Paul here is saying that, hey, every day, praying for, since we heard this, we don't cease. Maybe not every day. It doesn't say every day. But in my mind, that would mean that some kind of regular cadence to his praying. He's saying, hey, we didn't cease to pray for you. Ever since we heard about this thing that we need to pray for, we haven't stopped. It's been every single or day or however long it was. He says, we're not stopping. We're not ceasing to pray for you. I think of the parable of the importunate friend, where a person needed bread. It was in the middle of the night, but someone came by and he needed bread from a friend, and he knocked on the door, and his friend was asleep with his whole family. He said, go away. I'm not giving you anything right now. And the friend knocked again. And he said, I need bread. And he said, go away. And he knocks again. And he knocks again. And eventually, the Bible tells us that he gets up and he gives the friend whatever it is that he needs. Not necessarily because he loves his friend that much, or because he just cares so much about him. If that was the case, he would have done it on the first knock. But instead, he does it because he would not leave him alone, right? And so that's really a stencil for us here. And Paul is doing the same thing for his friends. He's not stopping praying for them. He says, we're not going to cease. We're going to continue on, especially for those around you. There are stories of people praying for years and years and years and years for people to get saved. And you hear the end of that story, the fruition of that prayer. That person gets saved after being prayed for how many ever years. And it's an amazing story, but that only really happened because they didn't cease. They didn't stop. They kept praying. They kept praying. Listen, if there's something in your life that you're praying for, whether it's for yourself or in this case with Paul, he's praying for friends. He said, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to cease. And you could be the same way. Don't stop. Continue to pray. It's not something, well, I asked him already. I'm going to leave it at that. No, no, no. Be like that friend at midnight that needed that bread. He kept knocking and kept knocking and kept knocking. You can be the same way. And don't cease praying. What a great stencil and pattern for us in our prayers like this. When you're praying for a friend or a family member to get saved or to figure something out or whatever that, for their next step in life, whatever it is, don't stop. Don't cease praying till you see an answer from God. By the way, that answer may not be yes. It may not be a positive answer to prayer, but don't stop praying until you find an answer to that prayer. And then in the second part of this verse also, it says, or I'll just read it to you, the second half of the verse, Paul here is speaking after he says, we're not going to cease to pray for you. He says, and to desire that ye might be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding. Listen, there's something you can pray for everyone about all the time without ceasing, and that is for wisdom. Finding his will, having the wisdom to know his will, having spiritual understanding. All these things are things that you can pray for consistently without ceasing for other people and for yourself. Wisdom is always needed, no matter what you do for work, no matter what size your family is, if you're single, married, kids, whatever it is someday. Doesn't matter. Everyone needs wisdom in whatever situation that they're in. So you can always pray for that without ceasing. And then spiritual understanding as well as listed there, knowing and understanding spiritually what is happening in that moment. We live in a very physical world, and it takes a mature Christian to understand there are also spiritual things happening behind that. We're fighting a spiritual battle. And so pray that spiritual understanding is something that you have and the people around you have as well. This is a great stencil for prayer. Sometimes our prayers are very trite. They're just for the food. They're just for the day. Let's start adding in some of these more specific things. Lord, give wisdom to these people around me. Lord, I'm not going to stop praying for them. I'm going to continue. I'm not going to cease. And also for spiritual understanding, that the things that we're thinking about and talking about spiritually make sense and I can understand them and I can share them with other people. That's what we want. That's where we want to be. Be praying more specifically and adding more spiritual things to our prayers. So this morning, really the lesson is about prayer. And how are you praying? What do your prayers look like? Are you ceasing in things when you don't see an answer after a while? Don't do that. Continue on. Be like that friend at midnight that won't stop until an answer is given. And then pray for those around you to have wisdom and that spiritual understanding for their lives. All right, well, there's a devotional from Colossians chapter 1, a great verse. And I challenge you, even today and the days coming, to add these things to your prayer life and don't cease. Don't stop. All right, well, as you go to prayer, speaking of which, this morning, spend a little extra time praying for the lost around you this morning. And then for our teenagers, we want to pray for Lily specifically as well. All right, thanks again for joining us here this morning. Thank you to all of you who are faithful to the podcast and the devotional that's presented there. And I hope that your prayer life was challenged just a little bit from the devotional this morning. Thanks again to you all for joining in, listening this morning, and we'll see you next time.